Some of these fossils here are what we call trilobites. Now, do they remind you of anything you might find under a log or a stone at home? Woodlice. Yes, exactly. And they look a bit like trilobites, really, which were basically sort of underwater bugs living about 300 to 500 million years ago. So a very long time ago. And they have these kind of bodies that are split up into little parts with tiny legs, and they were feeding on dead plants and animals at the bottom of the sea all those years ago. The next one, which is perhaps a very common fossil that we find around the West Country and around Bristol, is this one, an ammonites. Now, Amy came up with a fantastic, can you tell everybody what this used to be?
Wow, up there was where the squid little creature came out from it.
And what sort of creature was it like?
It's like a squid.
Yeah, like a squid or an octopus with lots of tentacles coming out, exactly.
And they got eaten by sharks, they did.
Fantastic. Here's another picture of some of them with these fantastic shells. And they got eaten by sharks, but also sea dragons known as ichthyosaurs. So they had a shell as a nice home, really, to protect them and keep them hidden away so they didn't get eaten quite so easily by things like sea dragons or sharks, as Amy was saying there. Bristol, at some point in time, would have also been quite boggy and marshy during a period called the Carboniferous period. And that's when we, around the West Country, around the Bristol region, would have had a lot of coal made. These trees would have fallen into the muds and become preserved. And as they were being preserved as fossils, they were turning into coal. So some of you got some very black fossils. Yep, we got some very black fossils up here, very dark fossil.
On the other side.
Exactly, so you've got little things on the back there. So these are basically fossilised trees that have turned into coal, very hard black substance, carbon, we've got one over there as well. And this one here is the root. It's a very bumpy root, it's very thick to stop creatures eating it, and it's almost as if it's been chopped with a knife. But this is part of a root of a lycopod plant, which would have been alive about 300 million years ago. The one you've got over there is basically a segment from a horsetail fern. Now we still get horsetail ferns growing in Bristol today. So who thinks they've got a big mammoth bone? No. Yes, we've got one up here.
Mammoth hip bone.
It's a hip bone, isn't it? Yes. It's the equivalent bone of the top of the leg, which fits into the hip bone. And if you put your hands into a fist, that's how big the top of your leg bone is. You can see that the mammoth or the mastodon bone is much, much bigger than us. And this is probably up to about 1 million years old. So hopefully that's given you a real idea of the sorts of different creatures and plants that have lived millions of years ago. And you guys have had the chance to really touch some quite amazing fossils. To finish off the session, you guys are going to be able to touch and handle a real dinosaur bone from this one here called the iguanodon, which was one of our very first dinosaurs to be discovered in the 1800s.